Now, the Prime Minister will deliver a stark message to EU leaders when he makes his first trip abroad. As Prime Minister this week, he'll tell Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron and others that they need to strike a new deal or the UK will leave on the 31st of October without an agreement. Meanwhile, more than 100 MPs from all sides of the House have urged the Prime Minister to recall Parliament, warning the country is on the brink of an economic crisis. Well, the former Brexit Minister, now Energy Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng is here. Very good to see you, Minister. The Prime Minister is effectively saying no deal is unstoppable if we want that to happen. Isn't he? Is that actually the case?
What he's saying is that we're going to leave with or without a deal on the 31st of October. And the reason he's saying that is that this has gone on too long. It was actually the policy of the previous government, Theresa May's government, that no deal was better than a bad deal. And I heard her say that, as many people did, hundreds of times. And we've got to deliver on that. One way or the other, we are leaving the EU on the 31st of October, and that's what the government's focused on.
But the Prime Minister's gone from saying it was a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that we wouldn't get a deal to now being, perhaps some would say, a little bit more realistic about it. It is looking unlikely, isn't it? The EU don't seem to want to be playing ball here.
Well, these things can change very quickly, and we've always said that our first aim, our preferred outcome, is for a deal. But if we don't get a deal, we have to be prepared to leave without one. And that's very clear. That was always been the policy of the government, even 2 or 3 years ago, when this whole process started. We wanted to get a deal, but we should have been prepared to leave without one.
But if we do leave without one, according to Operation Yellowhammer, hard border in Northern Ireland, shortages of food, fuel and medicines, that does sound pretty bad, you've got to be honest.
I think there's a lot of scaremongering around, and a lot of people are playing into Project Fear and all the rest of it. We've got to prepare for no deal. In fact, the previous Prime Minister created DEXU, and she said that the mandate of DEXU last summer, was to prepare for no deal. I was working in that department. That's what we were focused on. Now we've got a new Prime Minister who is very much focused on that, and the scale and intensity of those preparations are increasing, and we will be fully prepared to leave without a deal on the 31st of October.
It's a case of how you leave without a deal, isn't it? MPs are trying to, certainly some MPs, I should say, are trying to stop it. Gina Miller has said for her response to her legal challenge is that proroguing Parliament, she says now, cannot happen. The government has specified to her in that letter that's not an option.
No, we're not talking about proroguing Parliament. I mean, what people are doing, what their schemes, their hatching and plots, I don't know about that. What I do know is that the Parliament voted overwhelmingly for the referendum. The Parliament voted pretty overwhelmingly to trigger Article 50. The Article 50 process is coming to an end. The 31st of October wasn't our date. It was the EU who set that date. And we're very committed to leave by that date. And that seems perfectly logical to me.
If the only option is to call a general election prior, to the campaigning is happening before the 31st, an election on the 1st of November or whatever day that would be, is that an option that actually could be pursued? Is it something you would support?
I don't think anyone is talking about calling an election. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about things like a government of national unity and all the rest of it. I don't see that as a way forward. In order to have a general election, lots of things have to happen, which I think, in my opinion, are unlikely to happen. But we'll have to wait and see. But the main focus of this government is to deliver the referendum and to leave on the 31st of October.
If Parliament, when it comes back, there's a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson and he loses, there is some speculation out there that he may not accept that vote. He may carry on. Is that a possibility?
Well, there are lots of ifs in this situation. I mean, for a start, it's not clear to me that they will have a vote of no confidence. Maybe they will. And certainly if that happens, I don't think necessarily the government is going to lose that. So there are lots of ifs and hypotheticals here. And I'm sure that the Prime Minister will observe the letter of the law. Absolutely.
What about plenty of your colleagues, 100 MPs from all sides of the House, it's a substantial number, have said, Parliament, because of what is going on, Parliament needs to be recalled now and to stay in place until Brexit or that date has been changed or we've got out or whatever it may be. Isn't that a sensible idea?
Well, we voted on the recess. That was passed. It was a normal vote. And also, I think that there'll be ample scope when Parliament returns in September. As you've suggested, there'll be lots of debate. There could well be a vote of no confidence, as you've said. I don't know. But there'll be plenty of scope to debate these issues fully when Parliament resumes in September.
Look, can we move on to 1 or 2 other issues which are very much in our minds at the moment? I want to start with PC Andrew Harper, because of that tragedy this week. And I think that has really, the public are very much in shock as to losing a police officer whilst on duty. The Home Secretary talking about properly introducing a police covenant now. That needs to be done, doesn't it, in real terms?
I think the circumstances of Andrew Harper's death were appalling. And obviously people in the public more widely are really worried about the nature of crime, the nature of total disregard for police officers and other people. And I think the Home Secretary's got the right approach. I think we have to look at protecting our policemen and women who are at the front line. And I think the police covenant is a very good idea. I think we've got a strong Home Secretary who will always be on the side of the victims as opposed to the criminals.
There is, of course, this discussion, around the extra 20,000 officers and extra investment in the police. It's been welcomed on one hand, but there are plenty of people who've said it's not really the right investment in the right way when you look at different levels of crime and different types of crime in 2019. Does there need to be significantly more investment than what we're seeing in terms of 20,000 here?
Look, I think 20,000 is a start. Whenever a government announces spending commitments, people always say it's not enough or it's not deployed in the right way. I think 20,000 extra police officers is exactly the right way to begin to try and reassure the public and make the public more safe so that they feel more safe. That's the important thing. And I think that, there are other ways of policing. There are things like cybercrime and other issues, but we've invested in those as well. We've got some of the best cybersecurity in the world.
But making the public feel more safe is one thing. You also need to have a level of respect for authority and respect for the police, which seems to be lacking at the moment. How do you start to rebuild that?
Well, you're quite right. This is a cultural issue. In terms of levels of respect for police officers, that's something which we have to reverse in terms of the decline. But it's not something that can be done overnight. I think we've seen over the last 10, 20 years people being less respectful, not just of policemen, just out and around, where people are saying that we are in a more violent and disrespectful age. There's a lot of debate about social causes of crime, and I think we should absolutely support the police. It'll take a while to get back to the levels of deference that we saw in the past, but we can start now, and I think reassuring the public that 20,000 police officers is a good place to start.
And in trying to make our streets safer, obviously, there is this knife crime. There's some people are calling it an epidemic. I don't know whether that is a fair use of the term or not, but it is certainly very, very problematic in London and other parts of the country now. The Home Office launched this chicken shop box campaign. It's been criticised for being, amongst other things, borderline racist. Looking back now, do you have concerns about that campaign?
Not really. The important thing is that people are dying, people are getting killed. And the one responsibility the government has is to make sure that that goes down and is dealt with rapidly. Now, if the best way to communicate the message is the way that you described on chicken boxes or what have you in restaurants, then we've got to pursue that. And this policy didn't come out of the blue. It's been road tested. There were surveys done in terms of how young people, I think it's in between 10-year-olds and 21-year-olds, how young people absorb messages. And this was felt to be an effective way to get the message across. And if that is so, then we should do that.
Yeah, it's just there are people looking at this and saying, well, you're making assumptions about particularly young black men, where they're going and what they're doing.
I don't think these were assumptions. There was actual empirical evidence to suggest that this was a good way of reaching people who are affected by knife crime. And at the end of the day, it's those 10 to 21-year-olds who are adversely, disproportionately affected by these appalling crimes.
OK. Minister, very good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.